South Africa has been enlisted to join the GROW family to support in communication. And our focus is largely external communication. And what we do is to amplify evidence from your research and make that accessible and reachable to a wide network or a wide team of people. And we're coming from the premise that whatever research we do, the purpose is to create positive change. To be able to do that, we need to disseminate that. So that is where South Africa is coming in. And in that process, there are many things that we are supposed to help the teams with. Already we started many engagements with most of the groups, working with people, with teams in terms of shaping the policy briefs, working with teams in public communication, ensuring that if we have meetings, you have convenings, you have gatherings, we get media teams to come in and report and publicize the information. And I also wish to indicate at this point that we have already set up a portal for GROW research, which my colleague Anton will be talking to us about, where we want to use as a platform for communication sharing, and is going to be a repository of most of the information that we have. So briefly, the purpose of this meeting is to take us through some of the fundamentals of communication in research, and that's what we'll be looking at in a little while. And because of time limitation, we'll have very few presentations and then get at least some more time for us to have conversation as teams and among ourselves, and also to have plenary sessions where people can raise issues, give feedback, make comments, and give suggestions on what can be done. So in the program, at this point, we would have wanted IDRC to make a presentation to welcome all of us, but since Paul has not joined, we'll just go straight to the first presentation, which would be the basics of communication in research. And I'll be taking a turn to do that. After that, we'll have a presentation by Pamela Raburu, who will be talking to us about gender-responsive communication, and the premise of this that we are all involved in gender activities. So how do you communicate in a manner that is gender responsive? And then we'll have a plenary led by Mary Maura. After that, we'll have Daniel Otugi coming in to talk to us about effective media engagement. And then we have breakaway session. And the breakaway session will be giving direction. We'll be breaking in terms of our thematic groups and be giving directions on that. Then we'll have a reporting back coordinated by Susan. And then Leandro will take us through policy advocacy. And we'll have Anthony talking to us about the communication portal. And lastly, we have a wrap up and next steps after this. So on that note, colleagues, I would want to quickly make a short presentation on fundamentals of communication and research. And I'll start by talking about the connection or the nexus between research and communication. And most of us have been doing research, and the research that we're doing here is to provide evidence. And all of us know that research deals with three things. It describes, it explains, and it predicts observable phenomenon. And we know that research is a systematic inquiry, meaning that there's a lot of methodological approaches that apply. And we know that when you do research, the ultimate is to have evidence, and evidence should be reliable and should be valid. So we talk of validity, we talk of reliability, and this is where we talk of systematic inquiry. Now, at the core of research is relevance. We do research because we want to achieve something. We want to do something that's relevant to people. And that's why in any research project, we talk of what is the justification, what is the relevance of the study. There must be relevance. Now that relevance appeals to people. Now that leads us, when we talk about research, whatever you do needs to be communicated. So we talk of research communication, which then means interpreting, distilling, and breaking down complex matters into usable information for the ordinary people. And this is where the question of relevance comes in. Whatever research comes out with, you make it understandable to people and they see how it fits within their own lives. So this is the locus of the research and communication. That's where you come in. Now, in research, we know why we do research. Basically, we provide knowledge, and knowledge for policy formulation or other reasons. We identify and explain trends that we see. We do correlation analysis and all that, and then we see the trends. Then from what we get, we raise awareness of what's happening because of the correlations that we established. And because of also what we do in research, we're able to help people understand issues. And certain times, research enables us to challenge conventional wisdom that contrary to what people have believed, research tells us something contrary. And all through research, we're able to identify some of these practices. So this is where all of us as members of the GROW family have been involved in, be it in public procurement matters, be it on the norms, be it on skills and training. We're doing research that help us to at least serve these purposes. Then that leads us to the next question, which is, if we've done research, why do we need to communicate it? We want to reach a wider audience. Now, this wider audience, we don't reach them for no reason but to create positive change. And we know that the audience that we deal with have different interests, they have different attitudes, they have different priorities. So whatever we want to tell them at the back of our mind, we need to observe that they're coming into this with different perspectives. And that then leads us to the next point, which is, as we do reach out to these people, we know they have different interests, we know they have different attitudes, we know they have different priorities, but we're communicating research so that we help in creating awareness and with the intention of creating behavior change. We are also doing the research and communicating it to give visibility and branding to ourselves. And on this note, as the teams that are under GROW, we are doing various things and we need people to know what you're doing. We also do this so that we advocate. We use it for advocacy and policy dialogue, create a platform for which people can start conversations with evidence. And also we do this for public diplomacy and outreach, influencing the decisions, and also for sustainability. If we know at this point we've done this, we may now say we move to the next level because we've seen what research tells us. I then want to move to the fundamentals of research communication, because this is the core of our presentation. And what I want to talk about are 5 key things. 1, in research communication, we talk about audience. On this, we talk about who do you want to communicate to. We want to communicate to the policymakers, but who are they? Where are they? And what's the best time to reach them? We are talking about women in markets. When's the best time to talk to them? We can't talk to them in the morning. We have to see when they go to the markets. So we will ask ourselves, what's the best time to engage these people? And then what platform do you use to engage them? So in communication, the first thing we talk about is the audience who do you want to address. And this is important for us researchers because researchers always have the tendency sometimes of talking among themselves. Yet the message that you have is for a wider audience. So in our communication, we need to identify and clearly demarcate who these audience are, and therefore, whatever outcomes we have from our research, we shall package it to that group. The next thing is, what is a message? And messages, we have primary message, we have secondary messages, and all these messages, how do you package them? Because packaging is very important. Ultimately, in communicating, and especially in research, the key thing is, tell me a story that I can understand, a story I can appreciate, a story I can relate with. So that ideally should be our guiding principle. I want the story. Then in research communication, talk about impact. The research that we do, what is the impact? And what do I want to achieve? This impact should help me for policy advocacy, or should it lead to decision making? Should it lead to behavior change? Should it enable us to mobilize resources? So what's the impact of our research? The next thing is language and style. And this is at the heart of communication of research, because research is always heavy. Now, in communicating to the audience, we need to be simple, not simplistic. We need to be conversational. That is talking to people in a language that they can relate with. And that means minimizing jargon, minimizing technical things. And then talk of completeness, tell the story in a manner that somebody gets the full context. We talk of avoid, preferably, the short forms, avoid the abbreviations, because sometimes you have so many abbreviations which people don't understand. When, for example, you talk about gender empowerment under the Sustainable Development Goals, we may have the tendency of saying SDG 4, and we leave it at that. Now, many people don't understand SDG in the first place, and they don't know even SDG 1, let alone SDG 4. So that becomes a problem. So this is talk about completeness. The next thing is that research generally has a lot of figures. Now, we not communicate it for public audience, for the majority of people. We use figures sparingly because figures have the tendency of putting off people. Ultimately, the clarion point is clarity, clarity, and clarity. Then, in presenting our research for public, and I'm talking about public communication, we need to use visuals, pictures, graphics, tables, and charts. But whenever we use them, let them make sense to people. If we use a table, let the table speak to people. If we use a picture, let them speak to people. And we are saying, as a fundamental point, in doing research, let's put, as a strategy, let's put communication at the center, from the beginning to the end, as we go along the journey, so that there is no disconnect among this. Next. I then want to say that in terms of packaging our research outcomes, we have various communication products that we can use. And today we'll not be going through this, but just listing them, because as we go along, we'll be working with the teams to help in doing a number of these things. And these are doing press release, that is for the media, doing policy briefs, which I know most of us have started doing. The question now, how do you shape them up? Now, doing reports, because ultimately research must have a report. And then can do features. We can do case studies, podcasts and videos. Then there are scenarios in which I know there are people from universities and from various NGOs who are here. We can use some opportunities to have events, do media briefings, have exhibitions to show what you've done, so that we have kind of concept of proof. Then we are saying that in communication, we have various channels, which all of us are aware about. We have, the traditional media. We have now the new media, the social media and all that. But importantly, from where we are, one of the things that we want to support the teams with is tracking impact of communication activities. When we communicate, how do we measure that we've done something successful? We now have what we call audience metrics, which you can get from every story that is published online. We have anecdotal evidence, people saying something about, we've read about this or we've seen this. We also have citations of our work. We also have content sharing, and we also have referrals. So we have this as measures of seeing how we work. Now, what we have here may not be visible to all of us, but this is an example of audience metrics. There's a story that was published from Strathmore University when they had the second convention recently. And we were able to track, when this story is published, the page views, who went to visit that page, who are the unique people who went to that page, what average time did they take on that page? And you can even quantify the value of that story. So this is what you mean by audience metrics, which we do behind the scenes to be able to help teams to understand how the communication that is put out is helping in reaching out many people. In conclusion, we are saying that successful research communication must be targeted to address the interest and the needs of the intended audience. Remember the graphic we had of the audience. So we have to meet that need. Then the process of doing research communication should be part and parcel of it, should be an integral part of the whole process so that we know how things shape up from the beginning to the end. And lastly, what we have as communication package should be good presentation, should have arguments, should be concise, should have illustrations, data and analysis to help people understand what the issues are. Colleagues, I want to end on that note, and then we'll have a session for plenary. Thank you for listening. So we'll ask Pamela to come in, then after that we'll have a plenary to have a session where we can discuss the two sessions. So Pamela, over to you.
Thank you, David. I just want Anthony could display the presentation. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, good afternoon. Thank you, David, thank you, David, for making it very clear on communication. I'll straight away go into what my focus is. As the focus of the project, we are looking at women economic empowerment, and as we're going to talk about the gender responsive communication, I just want us to have a back of our mind. We are looking at equality existing markets where women, the access and control over their productive resources. How then are we going to communicate this in a gender responsive manner? How do we bring in their increased voice in the economic empowerment? How then do we put them in our decision making? So with that, therefore, we're saying what is therefore then gender responsive communication. And we're saying this is where we promote the inclusivity, as my colleague mentioned, equality in the respect of diversity, and also looking at all the dignity of all our people. So language is key here, as mentioned by Mr. Duda. So when we use languages, we can use images as you also presented. So, but these images, as he said, we now need to make them gender inclusive. We do not have to discriminate. We don't have to stereotype or exclude anyone on this. And in the inclusivity, then we will therefore promote gender equality and then the visibility of both women and men. And therefore, what will this do? The integration of gender in the communication. So the emphasis of being responsive here is to make clear that women are covered, men are covered, and nobody is left for this opportunity. The next. I will then move to how then do we have communication that is gender responsive? There are various strategies that we'll mention later, but I want to start. We have various ways. We talk about gender mainstreaming, gender inclusion, like I've mentioned, gender parity and equality. But key to this, as mentioned by the previous speaker, the language is key. In our research, if we don't use language that is clear, as I mentioned, then we may not have the message passed to everyone. Like we say in academia, you always have people publishing in journals. How many of us read journals? But in this, Science Africa want to help the team see how do we bring this to the people? How then do we use language to be gender inclusive? We need to avoid certain use of male and female, but it's advisable that we use what indicates personhood. Refer to them as a man or a woman or a boy. That is more gender sensitive in the communication and in our report. I've given a few examples there, and I'm sure many of us would be able to give us various examples. Commonly, people use young female singers, but you'd better use a young woman singer is more of a good practice. Male colleagues, I'm sure every other time say, oh, I have my male colleagues, I have my female colleagues. If you'd call them men colleagues or women workers, then that would also be more on the responsive or the sensitive aspect. We can move. Yeah, so after moving on to this, then we will also look at how neutral is our language. We could be using the correct language in responding to the findings that we have. But there are certain times that some words can be misinterpreted, or if sometimes certain languages are not usually neutral. And sometimes they would be looked at bias or discriminatory, or sometimes people feel they're actually demeaning to them. Certain times we use gender title like Miss, Mrs. Obviously, when we say Mrs., at the back of your mind, you already know you're married. But sometimes you may be, some people consider this offensive. I remember sometime in Nairobi, if people were called mama, some would argue in the matatis that, am I your mom? So sometimes we tend to we could use language that is more generally accepted. And sometimes we have titles like Miss. Miss would cover both married and those who are not. And sometimes it is also good, we may use neutral pronouns like they or them, instead of using something to say he or her. I've gone ahead to give some good practice and also some common mistakes that sometimes people have. My previous speaker talked about an audience, and you can see an author and their audience, but commonly we say author as audience. The police officer has a driving license, but commonly people will say the policeman. These days we have but they will also call the policewoman. But for us to be gender sensitive, we could be able just to make it a general officer, would be able to cover both male, both women and men. I saw a nurse. I saw a male nurse. In our society, it is still common that caring is for women, and you will always find people say, I saw a female nurse. When they say I saw a nurse, then therefore that would also be able to be able to discriminate against other people. Chairperson is a much better term than the chair lady. So those are the kind of language that sometimes if we use, then we are becoming gender sensitive or gender responsible. And this would also help us reporting to your results, or during dissemination as you are involving other stakeholders. It would just be expected in correct communication that you are able to use certain types of selected words or inclusivity in your work. I move again to another strategy that you'd use. Do not reinforce gender stereotypes in your communications on gender issues as you are sharing your results. In various job groups or job roles in professions, in health, in education, in tourism, in transportation, in security and finance, there are various areas that sometimes commonly in our societies, you'll find that people give different women or men to associated with certain group. But we say professions are having no gender. So certain roles and certain jobs should be all gender inclusive rather than portraying men separately for certain one and women in the diverse roles. In this case, I've also given a few examples that are common in societies. Bus and taxi drivers are men. When you go to the city of Nairobi now, we have some ladies as Uber drivers. Commonly, it is said nurses are women, yet you find a few, they are also men. Cooking, women. Security jobs are for men. In academia or in education, STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, sometimes you'll find people associating them with males, and then they put the women or the female, as it's called in the languages. So these are the kind of language and stereotypes that we as Africa in communication, it would be of interest that you respond or you communicate to that is all acceptable to all people. Sometimes also you will find women in rural areas do not participate in economic life, and their communities, they're into their communities, and this is a biased statement because this erases contribution in terms of unpaid domestic care. I think one of the topics with the groups is the unpaid care. So I think this is also quite relevant, as you'll find that we need to be not discriminating against reporting about the way the women are involved. Their work in every way is contributing to our economy, because if you leave, sometimes you go to work and you may leave your house help. Obviously, without them, then you would not be contributing to that economy. So I think like we had shared from this team doing the unpaid domestic care, this is one of the key areas that is relevant that you'll be able to use in communicating the gender aspects. And because we will always find there is a way that women and men come in, so that there is also that gender equality as we talk to our stakeholders. I move. So I want to look at then in your research and dissemination results, what is the significance? I remember my previous colleague also commented about why research. I just want to talk about that with gender responsive communication. We are also addressing barriers and respects of gender differences, like I've mentioned in my previous communication. In our reports, we also now conspicuously, we request that you focus on economic issues without leaving the men, and then the gender stakeholders engagement. So in engaging stakeholders during dissemination, you are able to bring to focus. Oh, sorry, let me just put this to mute. Someone is just passing. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was just talking about stakeholders engagement, where whenever you are doing this, try to involve sometimes in the discussions or sometimes in the report. Try to involve every aspect of different people that are in the meeting or in their participation or tasks that are given. And in that way, therefore, one of the other areas is our gender mainstreaming, which we may talk about in our other webinars that are coming. I've just given several summaries into what we are able to do in the gender inclusion in all aspects. In research and significantly, we also ensure gender parity, as I'd mentioned earlier. The decision-making process that involves the ladies and the men at the same time. My colleague mentioned the use of images and visuals, but in this context of the gender aspect, then we need to avoid certain images that are not objectives, that are subjective, and that show sexual differences in other areas, and they're also needing to involve people of different genders. So basically, in this way, we are just looking at when you bring in the stakeholders engagement, then you move into uptake of the intervention. What then are you going to suggest in the end when you finish up your work? You after engaging people of different genders, then actions that would support this in terms of organizing training sessions. In your results, you can also use sex disregarded data to show us what is the percentage of women, what is that of the men, how then do we, all genders contribute to the society. And this will therefore ensure our inclusivity and in overcoming barriers and participation in this. So as I conclude, we are just trying to summarize and say, when we incorporate the sex and the gender analysis in our qualitative and quantitative data, this may not be enough. But as we are reporting our work, we may engage different situations that women and men go through in their gender roles. We may involve various areas, I'm sure through the stories that involve the gender discrimination in law and practice and in policy and education. For example, if you're reporting something in education, we try to take a positive aspect of it, portray that example that women accomplished and also get greater results despite whatever goes on in their gender inequalities. So I think with this, therefore, there are various areas that are under communication for this, but we shall be discussing as we get through our other seminars that we can be able to talk about each of them into details. For example, when we are talking about gender mainstreaming, then therefore, how then can we make that communication responsive? When we talk about gender inclusion, we are talking about the making everybody diversity in all the cultures. How then do we make this acceptable or incorporated in our communications? And how then do we put the communication in gender to ensure we transform attitudes and the norms that perpetuate the gender-based discrimination? So with that, team, allow me to stop there and hand over to my colleague, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Now is that moment where I want to open the sessions and we'll ask Mary to take over the plenary. Mary, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. I hope everyone has been listening to the wonderful presentation by David and Professor Pamela. And we invite you to this platform now to share your feedback on this and also how it relates with your work. We could start maybe with David's work. You can raise your hand on how he was defining research and communication, how it relates with your work. At least you've already done the research. You have the information, now it's communicating. Feel free, raise your hands. Anyone? No feedback from all the presentation? Okay, maybe I can remind you from where we started. David started by defining what is research. Yes? Hello? Are we all here or it's already lunchtime? You know, it could be lunchtime and people are also struggling to balance. And then after defining research, He discussed the relevance of research, like why are you doing the research? People can share. I can see from the chat you have people from Kidogo. I can see people from APRI, Uganda. Why are you doing the research? You see this training, it will be more useful if you give us your user experience and relate it to their work. We don't want it to be just a regular training. We want it to be more useful to your training. We also people have from Child Fund, INASP, Oxfam, Uganda, Kidogo, yeah. Anyone, please raise your hand.
Mercy, you have a number of people. Mary, with their hands up. There is Mercy, there is Linda, there is David, a number of people.
Oh, sorry, I cannot see on my interface. Kindly assist me. We could start with Mercy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mercy Kamau. I'm a program manager at Inclusivity. So at Inclusivity, we are focusing on tackling women economic empowerment and unpaid care burden in Ethiopia. And so far with what we have done, we have been able to, on what David was talking about in terms of research, we have been able to do a systematic literature review and also policy analysis. And also from the policy analysis, we've been able to create a policy brief. And my question on that is goes with what Pamela and David were talking about, just looking at the language, the scientific language that we've used. So we are trying to make it not be too scientific, but at the same time, the impact or the message that we want to put out is what are the provisions, for example, that are already in the different policies that have been put in place. Do we have women economic empowerment and unpaid care provisions in the different policies when it comes to agriculture, ICT, and things like that? So at what point or how are we able to address this in a way that's not too scientific? And then second question is for Pamela in terms of like images to use. So part of one of the things that we're going to be doing is creating a help desk, which is currently underway. And the help desk is more for policy actors to be able to look at the information that we have been able to discover. So that is from the policy analysis, from the blogs we are writing, and also for them to raise different issues and questions on that. So it's a learning management system. But in terms of images, being that it's women economic empowerment and unpaid care burden, I know you've mentioned that we should not just focus solely on women. So even in this instance, do we just make it all inclusive and not too much on women? Like for the image put out.
Okay, thank you very much. Master, you have one question for David and another one for Pamela. David, you may answer as short as time as possible, then Pamela.
Thank you so much. This is David Pinomudisha.
Okay.
From APRI.
Yeah. Yes, continue, David.
We are currently undertaking various research projects. One of them being analyzing the market women in Uganda. And we have also undertaken various research like scoping study, and we write various reports. But I'm very grateful, most especially on the hint on abstaining from use of short forms or assuming that people know, like an example given on use of SDG 4 for gender sustainability, assuming that people know, yet we need to always be detailed enough when we are writing. And also on making sure we customize messages to the audience we intend to communicate to. Like an example given still on the market women, if it's a primary or secondary message, we always need to make sure that we understand who, where, and at what time we need to communicate. We need to frame this message to be able to deliver what we need it to do. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I think we'll take the questions then. From those questions, Pamela can respond together with David. There was also another one person, hands which was up, I think they put down. It was Linda. Linda, are you okay?
Yeah, my question has been asked. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I give the chance to David from South Africa to respond, and then Dr. Pamela, and then we can go back to question from Daniel Masharia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thanks, Mercy, for the question raised. The substantive issue is how do you simplify the messaging without being simplistic? This is done at different levels. One of them is the language we use. Two is the kind of depth we go when we are doing material for public communication. We know that we're looking to an audience, our diverse audience, that includes people who may not be as literate as we are. We don't go into much depth. There are things, for example, we may not include. For example, detailing the methodological approaches you used in your study. You avoid those kind of things. So talk about the language, the scope, and also the presentation. And presentation, we talk about style, we talk about what makes the communication material appealing to the eye and appealing to the reader, appealing to the audience. So there are various ways of doing this, and in subsequent meetings, we'll be going in details into how we achieve that. But basically, that is what we have in mind. Over to you, Mary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The second question was asked to Dr. Pamela. You may respond.
Yes, thank you. I think this is the one that was having a help desk and the policy and using images. How would they put this? Would they put men more or women more? The focus of the project is women empowerment. I think what this needs to come out is how have we put this, how are we given the results on about the women existence in the market? How do we put them having the decent jobs? Do they have a voice? So in reporting on coverage of the women aspect, it is important also to bring in the men as well, because when we talk about women only on their side, then how then would you compare how they relate to the way the men are accessing this? But commonly, as the literature says, and many of the projects, you can see that women have been underrepresented, and you can bring in images showing them contributing to various work. I remember there is also a project here about women in transportation, so that will be also able to tell us that women in all aspects are able to participate in job roles, in policy making. How have we involved women in decision making in all our policies? So I think it's the way you put the language, as Mr. Duda has said, but make them in a way that is acceptable, that is carrying all with emphasis on the area of women that has been now able to be empowered in different aspects. If there's anything else I would be able to, but I've also seen a question on the, can we use gender sensitive language? I think that is by one of our colleague participants. Gender sensitive language, I don't think there's a specific time to use it. Even in our everyday communication, like sometimes you refer to a people, these are the people coming from this. I think it is just important. It is only through this project that we are talking about gender responsive language. But I think in our everyday use, it is important to use this, just like I gave examples of the policeman, the police officer. So for the project, it would be important that you take caution on the way you use the language so that it is more positive and accepted, and therefore you'd be able to change attitudes and behaviors of people as they get to see women as part of the society and their empowerment to the different job roles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Pamela. Yeah, I think gender sensitive language is important. You could see people actually more, I don't know if the right word is to use woke or aware. In social media, if you call someone female, they take it as a derogatory term. So we have to be sensitive. And if you're going to do a policy dissemination or publish something and have a section of comment, people will give you feedback. And so you don't want to find yourself on the wrong or being corrected by them, which is not bad. Or also maybe encouraging a certain stereotype and siding with them, since this should be educative and giving them the right information. Daniel had a question. Daniel Masharia.
Hello, everyone. Mine is not a question, just a comment of how informative this session is to me. And I'm Daniel from Kidogo, where we deal with ensuring that there is quality, affordable childcare quality in East Africa's low-income communities. So as part of the design and comms team, I think I can really relate with this presentation. And maybe just a comment is that it is true from experience, since as part of the comms team, we usually follow part of the other teams wherever they do their projects. So when the integrators, we are able to work together and we are able to create video testimonials so that, and even sometimes photography, so that in terms of communication, there's a lot of transparency, because when you record a video from the field, it's direct feedback from a woman in the field. So that feedback is really transparent, or is seen transparent, and it has a bigger impact than sometimes a written report. Sometimes in design, you say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you don't have space to put 1,000 words in a report, yeah, feel free to use an image. And thanks so much for this session. It's been very, very great to me and the team here.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your feedback. I believe everyone is learning from the presentation, and I know after this one, we'll share the PowerPoints to the participants to always refer. And also, since South Africa is only the communication, from the previous question, if you have to do a publication or communications work related, feel free to send the document to be given feedback on also how you can make it better, not to dilute, but to simplify for the understanding of the common people. And also gender responsive in communication. I think gender responsive communication, I've also remembered on language neutrality. When you're talking of neutrality, you can see on where we are going, especially with the LGBTQ plus community. Most prefer defining on how you can refer to them. They, them, someone will say, would prefer to be referred as her or she. So it is important, if you are interacting with them, asking them on how they prefer to be identified with. I think it's now the recent form of courtesy, not just assigning gender to the population. And I believe for the plenary session, time is up. But unless there's something else someone would like to add, I think it's been wonderful. And I'll hand over back to David Aduda from South Africa to invite the next guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that wonderful session. At least we've been able to reflect. Therefore, ask Dan to come in and talk about effective media engagement.
Do I speak from there? Okay. Yeah, it's okay. So you can project. Okay. All right, thank you very much, Anthony, and good afternoon once again, everybody. I just want to take you through a few slides on effective media engagement. How do you engage with the media so that your messages are passed across? And that is the outline. At least each of them is a slide. And next one. So messaging, I think David has talked about the importance of messaging when you're talking about communication. But from the media engagement perspective, the right starting point is to come up with a plan, a media engagement strategy. This is really important because this is like the guide mark, is what will guide you in terms of how do you work with the media to get your messages across. How do you work with your team members, your partners to get your messages across? And it is very important that you do this. And maybe the best starting point, as you all know as researchers, is to kind of do a small, however small, baseline study to help you get the right data that would guide you in, that you'd use in coming up with your plan. And this is very valuable because it will give you the information you need. And of course, if you don't do that, then you cannot be able to guide the outreach properly. Next. This is just an example of a template that is being used globally in terms of being able to capture or to properly document your media activity or media outreach plan. Then one of the key things once you've done your strategy, and if you use, for example, the hub and spoke model, whereby you have the hub as the grow, or the specific research projects that we have, say, for example, AFIC, which has reached the more or less towards the end of its program, and you now want to reach out to the people. That is coming too late. It's important that after you've done your strategic plan, or your media engagement plan, one of the first things you need to do is to build capacity. This is important because journalists deal with so many things. They cover so many areas, and it's important to focus their attention in the area that you're interested in. For us here, it is about women economic empowerment, looking at different aspects, like based on the projects that you're undertaking. So if you pick a few well-selected journalists from different fields, both online, broadcast, TV, radio, and print, and put them in a room together with some of your partners and also some experts, then you're able to exchange ideas and be able to direct them properly. This is very important, and one of the key things that should be done to be able to do a proper or effective media engagement. And to do this, the other thing you need to do as one of the modes of engagement is to build partnership with the media. And also, this is very key because you need friends in the media, and you need to bring these friends in the media, I mean the journalists, the editors, and all that, and to work together with you and also your partners. The partners are usually drawn from the target audiences, like you see. For example, media in the 5 countries that we operate in are organized into very interesting groups that you can be able to identify and work with. Look at Kenya, you have the Editors Guild, you have it in Uganda, you have in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and I think also in Rwanda as well. So you can be able to reach out to them and interest them, usually through various sittings or meetings with their leadership, and talk to them about what you are dealing with, the messages that you care about. And then, of course, there is also the peer networks. And some that are really very key to this are the women media associations, like the AMWIC in Kenya, the Association of Women in Media in Kenya, and then the Uganda Media Women Association, Tanzania Media Women Association, and so forth and so on. So if you identify this, and I've put some links there so that you can be able to reach out to them, can provide the others from the other countries and reach out to them, it would be very good. Recently, I think AFIC, when they were here in Kenya, met with the women media leaders. And this was really, really very helpful because women who are also in the media are very, very responsive to women economic empowerment issues. And some of them hold very powerful positions in the media organizations where they work. So if you work with them as a group, as a team, both within the Editors Guild and also in the associations, it will be very, very helpful. So messaging has been talked about by David quite a lot, and it is one of the key things that we really need to focus on when we are developing our messages before you put them on a particular platform, whether it is a policy brief or whatever. We need to agree what is the message. And I'm emphasizing the purpose of a message, that it is supposed to influence the receiver, the audience. And that means, like David said, you need to get your target audiences very clearly. And then for each audience, if they're so different, you need to know what kind of messages, information do you want to pass to them? And then work out those messages before you put them on the platform. And the 7 C's of effective communication is very important here when it comes to, and we're going to look at them in the next slide. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that the success of communication depends on what we say or what you say, to whom, and how you say it. And saying does not just mean verbal, it also means through the various platforms. It also means what you put on paper, posters that you produce, and also, of course, how sensitive in terms of the language, as Pamela was talking about, it is. And as communicators, one of the simplest model of communication that we always like using, which is very straight, is by Laswell, the model by Laswell. It says, who says what, in which channel, to whom, and with what effect. And this is very loaded if you understand communication well. So if you use that model, you'll be able to properly direct the kind of information in a very structured way, the messages that you pass across. And like I said, the 7 C's of effective communication are listed there. We have clarity, it has to be complete, and we can share the details about each one of them. You can find they are varied, the C's are varied, but these are the main ones that you need to ensure that your message that you're putting across actually has those, you check them against those 7 C's. And then the tools, like what David had mentioned, and also you also add the electronic ones and of course the social media platforms. But first you get the message correctly before you come to putting them on those particular platforms. Then the other mode that you can use to communicate with the media or to engage the media effectively is exposure visits. The seeing is believing is very powerful. If you take the journalists to meet with the procurement officers, for example, so that they have a conversation, they understand what is happening from the policy perspective, from the actual thing that they do, what are the challenges that they're facing. If you take them to go to the market centers where there is the care centers, like in Uganda, where they're coming up with the care centers at marketplaces to help women business leaders in those areas, and also in workplaces, in schools, and any other, like the Kidogo centers, for example, are very, very interesting. Some of us who are learning them, and these are solutions-based stories that journalists will be very interested, but they want to know, they want to meet these people, they want to see how is it done, they want to talk to the beneficiaries. The Build Her, for example, I hope the teams are here also, take them to construction sites where women are leading, not just as hands, the Watuamkono, or people who carry the stones or whatever and put them up, but also directing. They are the architects, they are the quantity surveyors that are involved in the field. Let the journalists meet them when they are working, so that they can be able to put it in their mind that this, yes, it is true, this is happening. Take them to the TVET, and engage with the trainers, engage with those who are being trained in, I think you missed the, Tony. So take them to the TVET and meet with some of the women or students who are studying in those TVETs and the subjects that they are taking. I think that will really ground them or give them the best data that they need and the evidence for the effective solutions-based stories that you actually would like the media to carry. Because sometimes when you have research like this, people think you cannot engage the media in such kind of visits, but it can happen. You know, it can happen. If you think of it and become innovative enough, you'll be able to engage them well. So the next is, I think, media dialogue platforms, as Tony works on that. Yes, the media dialogue platforms is also a good mode in the sense that the key thing here is that you would like to bring your partners together with the journalists that you're targeting. The journalists, remember we said you cultivate relationship with those journalists. Of course, you also cultivate relationships with your partners, and the partners are drawn from your key target audiences, so that when the journalists meet them and they also meet the journalists, they can influence each other. It can create a working relationship, friendship between the journalists and your stakeholders, so that these people can be able to, the journalists can be able to get the right kind of information that they need to write the good stories, the effective stories that you are looking for in terms of quality and also in quantity. And you can have seminars, you can have breakfast meetings, you can have online platforms where you bring them together, and many other ways of getting the team together to be able to work together. Then the other thing that is working and is really catching on all over the world, not just here in our region, the East Africa or the Eastern Africa region, is the recognition. Everybody wants to be recognized. So organizations are using grants, they're using sponsorships, they're using fellowships to be able to recognize and celebrate excellence in reporting on the issues of concern to us. In this case, women economic empowerment. If we can be able to be creative enough, we can work not as individual research organizations, but as Grow East Africa, so that the teams together come up and come up with some of the grants that journalists can use. And this is very important nowadays because a number of journalists actually are not employed by their media houses. So they depend on the stories that they produce. Sometimes they lack resources to be able to do deep analysis of stories. So such grants, story grants, some minimal grant like 50, maybe 50 to $100, $500, $1,000, $200, $2,000 for fellowships and sponsorship for conferences and things like that comes in handy for such kind of journalists. First, to get put food on their tables. Secondly, to do major deep stories for women economic empowerment that would influence policy, influence decision-making, and also interest your audiences. Then, of course, last but not least, is about monitoring and evaluation. It's important that you keep track of what is happening in terms of what are you putting out there, what stories are being put out there, and you can do that through media tracking. There are tracking agencies that can do that, but you can also do your small tracking by working closely with your journalists, so that whenever they publish anything, they share with you the link or any other medium that they have. Then you can also occasionally do content analysis. Maybe after 1 year, then you look at 1, 2, 3 key major media outlets, and then do content analysis and see what are the trends that are emerging, and use that plus, of course, surveys, opinion surveys from beneficiaries, partners, the journalists themselves, and then projects that are ending, like AFIC and the others, before maybe they are even renewed, or even after they renewed, the first phase, impact assessment, your media engagement, did it have any impact? Then you use that, of course, to start the process again, feed it back into the media engagement, because this is something that is never ending. And my last statement would be, that media engagement should start from the beginning at the concept level. The moment you designing the project, start thinking of communication, and media engagement is part of the communication. And as they said, policy advocacy, the media engagement, effective media engagement is a major component of that, without which you cannot go so far, because it's the media that has the power of why we call it the mass media. And this is the spoke and hub and spoke model that summarizes all that I have said. So you can have it as something you can, a dashboard that you can look at, then you put content to each of those spokes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So is that moment when we want to go into a breakaway, and the breakaway will go automatically. So we have 3 breakaway rooms where we have unpaid care teams that are working in these areas. And here we have people working child care and norms. And then we have skills and training, like teams like NEWA. We have then labor market segregation, or we have public procurement. We have teams like Strathmore, Africa. I know they are all here. Then we have, yes, we have those 3 breakaway rooms, which Anthony has created. So we want to ask the various teams to join the various rooms which correspond to the areas that you work in. And when people are broken, the question that you want to deal with is what are the communication products that you need to work on now, and how can we help you? We'll be sharing that on email, on the chat. We are going to look at the communication products that you want to work on, and then you state what are the issues or challenges there are in dealing with those communication, the communication materials. And we ask that you pick at least 2 or 3 communication materials that you're keen on, the challenges that you find, and how SANS Africa can work with you to deal with them. Now, we put ourselves in groups so that we're able to come with some common areas that we come with some common areas that will be relevant to our area of work. So Anthony will again share the questions after we've gotten into the groups. And the breakaway will take 15 minutes. When you come back, we'll be reporting, and Susan Rasare will be taking charge of that. So we have 3 groups. Kindly join, and then we tackle the question of communication materials.
Okay, this is Anthony. I've just created the 3 breakout rooms, so kindly, you should be able to see a notification to join a group, so select the one you respectively join, and then we proceed from there. Thank you. I'm seeing around 11 participants have an assigned breakout rooms. So kindly join according to your theme.
I can't see the option for joining the room on my screen.
Maybe I can assign you from here. Is it Mary or who is that?
Yes, Mary speaking.
So which breakout room do I assign you to?
I don't know which options you have.
We have unpaid care, we have skills and training, and we have labor market segregation.
You can put me in skills and training, the one which relates to TVET.
Okay, I've just done that.
Okay, I got it now.
Okay. Any other participant who is unable to join? I can join you. I can make you an admin and join from your end.
Nora?
Sophia, I'm seeing you're currently not assigned to any. Sophia, Susan. Martha, I've seen you raise your hand. Which breakout room do I assign you to?
Unpaid care.
I'm also not assigned, Susan.
Which breakout room do I assign you to?
Labor markets.
Okay. So we currently have Sophia and Tigist who are not yet assigned.
Yeah, I can make it for the labor market. Thank you.
Okay. What about Sophia Gira?
We're good with writing our reports, but also we don't want to make them too scientific again. I believe there's a technical report template. So if that can be shared and also guidance, and if there's any further guidance, it would be very helpful.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you. Can we have the next? I hope, David, you are able to get Marcy's institution and then the issues on help desk. Can we have the next person, please?
Maybe institution, if she can just tell me the institution.
Marcy, your institution, please.
Include of it.
Include of it. From? Include. Okay, the next person, please.
I'm Daniel Masharia from Kidogo.
Daniel Masharia, Kidogo, Kenya.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Kidogo, Aliet, Kenya. And my question will be, okay, I'm part of the design and comp team, and we like to do advocacy videos, videos that really show the impact. And
are we engaging? Yeah, so we actually have the option on deciding on who we're engaging. It could be the stakeholders, the beneficiaries, the partners, and the communities. Yeah. Okay, I can see South Africa is in this breakout room, Otunge.
Science Africa.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Yes, we are discussing on what we are supposed to do in the breakout room.
Oh, okay. David, can you help me? Just one. The question is, what are we supposed to discuss?
Oh, okay. The question is, we are supposed to itemize at least 2 or 3 communication products that you want to do and how Science Africa can help. 2 or 3 communication products that you are keen on working on and the challenge you have, and therefore what you want Science Africa to do for you. Could be policy brief, could be doing videos, something like that.
Okay, you've had?
Yes, you've got it. Thank you. I believe now it's far much better for the members, Michael and Amare.
So we can keep on the discussion, I think. So the question is, which communication product are you using, and what challenges are you facing in using of this communication product, and what support do you expect from African Science? Yeah, from Science Africa.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe I missed it. What is it that you do, and then we can in just a minute or two.
Daniel, are you in the house to get to that? Hello, the participants. It would be maybe to save time, you would just be able to tell us which is this area that they don't do, because there is so much that Science Africa does, as had been explained.
So one of the things we were interested in, we have a workshop, and we're interested in mainstreaming.
Yes.
And so we wanted any kind of assistance that would go with mainstreaming, either a different way of doing it or even having the kind of infrastructure that can do that. That is one. But also, the other thing that, and that's why I said I'm not so sure, you're assuming that we know what it is, but we may not even know. We are doing this on unpaid care work. It's about
Ethiopia, yeah. Ethiopia, yeah. I think they're
so I think they are back. So probably we will give the feedback. Is it okay?
Please, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
If the time is not reached, we can summarize and to have an agreement on that, Susan.
Okay, can I go on before we are called back? So what you said was about networking and information dissemination. There's a gap in terms of gender equality, and many we realize that most of the information is given by men. So we realize that there's a gap within the women, because if the women issues are looked into, but the information is given by men, then probably the men may not be in the women's shoes to give the right information. So that was one of the things you said. Then accessibility of the information was also very key. How do these people get access?
Someone to go up before we are back to the main session. Someone to share their needs. Sorry, we didn't get your name. The previous person who talked. Your name, please, and organization.
My name is George Bogere. I work with S Policy Research Institute in Uganda.
Okay, Uganda. Thank you. I hope, David, you have recorded that. Thank you. Can we have the next person before we run out of time? Any other team willing to share their concerns? I can see Nora, Martha, Irene, John, Patricia. Are we in the house? Martha, are you talking?
No.
Yes, hello. 2 more minutes we have.
Their programs people. Is that correct?
Yeah, that perfectly right.
Yeah, and also for the policy dissemination that you do you have maybe connections with the media? For example, like when you're doing the policy dissemination to invite people, do you have such, the stakeholders, or maybe the moderating, such kind of things? How is it going on your end?
Actually, during the panel discussion, we invite media peoples. We do have an agreement.
That's what.
Yeah, that's true. That's fact. So I think that is well elaborated. So probably we'll present because I'll be taking the notes and giving feedback.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. You are from you are from where?
I'm from South Africa. Yeah.
South Africa. Which organization you are?
Come again.
Are you from
South
Science in
Africa?
Africa?
Still the one giving the training now. In women
oh, great.
With that, then I will allow me to thank you for participation into this group. As we get back, you can still send messages to Science Africa with details of specific areas that we are working. My name is Professor Pamela, Science Africa.
Okay, so we want to welcome all of us back. Leandro, welcome. I've seen you joined. Sorry for waking you up so early.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
David. That's fine. Happy to be here on time.
Thank you. So we want to hand over to Susan Rasari to take us through the session, the reporting back. Susan, over to you.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to appreciate the time we had together. Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Susan, we are together, we can hear you.
Yes, Susan.
Okay. So we were looking at the main aspect of communication. We were divided into 3 groups, and the question was, what are the communication gaps you really want Africa now to all challenges, all issues? You really want Africa now to support. So we were divided into three groups: unpaid care work. So probably you can start with the reporting. Let's the first go unpaid care work, then we had the skills and training, then we had the third group, labor market. So can we get the first group give us the feedback, the unpaid care work?
Thank you so much. This is David Twinomugisha from April. The first discussant asked on a question. This is Matthew from Included. She needs assistance on how the help desk language should be made in a way that is understandable, how the literature review, the blogs, and how to prepare a scientific report that is understandable. Then another person, this is Daniel Macharia from Chidogo, Kenya. He said, how well can the advocacy videos be made in a way that influences policy makers, and how communication could be made and which team at every stage should be involved? Then we have Daniel Tuge came to guide that we should itemize 2 or 3 communication products. That is maybe policy briefs, blogs, that maybe an organization may be working on, and ask such questions for where there's need for help. Then George Wogere from SC Policy Research Institute, April, asked that at times, before we ask, at times we even don't know what we want. But the main question was, how can the mainstreaming infrastructure be made regarding unpaid care work for continuous messaging to achieve its aim of mainstreaming? And how should social media be involved? Yeah, this was it from the unpaid care work team.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I believe the second group to present was
Thank
on
you,
skill training.
David. Thank you, David, for the presentation. Let the second group present to us the next. The second group is skills and training.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. For the skills and training, you are the 3 of us, Michael Murigi from Partnership for Economic Policy, and also Amare from Child Fund Ethiopia. And the discussions were on the communication products that they use and the challenges and support that they would like to get. And the Partnership for Economic Policy shared, they've been working with South Africa, and they've been receiving some sort of support, and they've been making changes and improvements on the same. So they would like to know. And this product that they use is in policy briefs. Yes. Continue to improve on the same. And now also from they mostly do policy dissemination workshops and also press releases. And they would like, and they mentioned they are mostly program people with no communications person, a technical person on that. So the support they'll need from South Africa is on on how they can improve on their press releases, and also how to make better their policy dissemination. And they also mentioned they do annual impact reports. So any support also to make that better on their end would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank
Susan, you're muted.
Sorry. Thing is, so probably I give a rise.
Yeah, thank you. We are discussing with Susan about this labor market issue and what are the challenges for the communication. The first one is about the first challenge is about communication for the labor market is the accessibility of information. That is, most of the communications are disseminated in different kind of medias or modalities, but it may not be accessed equally for both genders, as for both men and women. So we have to have doing a kind of assessment in which channels and which modalities the women can access the information, because we see that most of the time the women doesn't have most information like for the men. So this is one of the challenges. The second one about the networking, because during the communication, because of the communication, people may not know about the network and the information they have. And this network needs to be establishing a network or a platform for proper entry point for communication. The other one is about the financial issue. One of the basic challenge for communication is, for the digitalization issue. Communication mostly for this world is now globally. It's for globalization, it's a digital world. So the men and the women have access for digitalization. I think it was presented by Pamela about the issue of STEM field. And currently, if the digitalization, how many men and women are using for this digitalization issue. So it needs to be in depth to discuss on this issue to ensure that the labor market, gender equality, and the inequality issues. These are some
Have we lost Tejas?
Competencies and empowerment. So we have to make sure that the finance, the digitalization, the communication, and the accessibility issues are the major thing. I would like to give the floor to Susan to add something. Thank you, Susan. Over.
Thank you so much, Tigis. When we are giving the information or during the communication as strategy, we ensure that we don't be biased, especially on the men, because this is the women's program. We don't be so biased and maybe look at the only women issues, but we can also incorporate the man because they also work hand in hand in order to make the project success. Thank you so much, the team. I just want to summarize and also appreciate the groups and paid care work reported by David. It was clearly articulated how the language is really necessary, the literature review, and also the video. They also talked about looking at the communication products, which is also necessary. They also looked at the infrastructure, how it can also help in terms of communication. Then when we look at the next team skills training, they were also particular in terms of economic policy, shared policy briefs, which can also be tracked, press release, and how somebody can communicate better when one is disseminating policy issues in terms of the research. Then finally, the last team, that is labor market, has just been summarized, and it was about networking and information dissemination, the gender gaps, which also needs to be looked at, especially when the information is given out, and not only considering men, because sometimes it was realized that in this team that men talk for women. So that can also be looked at when there's communication taking place. And in terms of the pictures given out, do they correlate with the activities or the research is being undertaken? Then media, which was also looked into. Do the women understand the media aspect? So that because the community, that is the research people, the people being researched on and the researchers, do they correlate? So that can also be very much important. And finally, we realized that when we look at the media in terms of WhatsApp group, LinkedIn, Facebook, are the women really there so that they can also talk for themselves or also share with the products they are undertaking? So that we also felt in the group that it was also very, very much necessary. So I want to thank the team for their participation and also for the inputs. And I think David has also taken care of this under Science Africa. We will also be able to ensure that what the gaps the team have will also be looked into. Thank you very much. And back to David.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks everyone for the participation. We've listened and listened very carefully to the presentations, which are going now to take over from here. In the interest of time, I want to bring in Leandro, then we can wrap up because time is not on our side. So Leandro, over to you.
Yes, hi, David, thank you. Hi, everyone. How are you today? David, are you sharing my the presentation, or you want me to share it? I can do it if you prefer.
I can do it, Leandro, that would be okay.
Okay, yeah. Then just let me share my screen. Yeah, just 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Leandro, we are able to see it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Yeah, so in interest of time, I will try to be very brief. So Science Africa colleagues ask us if we can make a presentation that to reinforce this idea of how we can link communication output, communication efforts with policy advocacy, which is what INASP which INASP is supporting the teams in this program. So I think the best advice and what our experience suggests in this regard is that the best thing is to have a plan, actually an adaptive plan, since the context is always volatile and changing. And if you remember, last year, early in our engagement in the GROW program, we come up with a policy influence plan template, which had a series of components, or also we can think about them as steps. So what we believe is that the best way is to think and plan ahead, following these components. So define your policy objectives, so what you want to achieve. That's why we always emphasize the type of policy changes that you can think about. analyze the context, what was the policy and the political context, and also the international context, and all the different external elements that may affect your intervention, what is going on, how it may change, what can be anticipated, what are the policy windows, identify your key stakeholders. We have emphasized the importance of having an stakeholders mapping that helps you understand who are the key stakeholders that will be affected or can affect your intervention. What are their interests, their motivations, their resources, the level of power. Also, visualize a change strategy. Sometimes this is done through a theory of change that, based on your policy objectives or your objective, how do you go from A to B to C? Usually it links activities with outputs, with outcomes, and with a final impact. Develop a communication plan. That's where our colleagues from Science Africa can really help, and they are being very supportive in this area. Come up with a management plan, how we manage it, the entire intervention, and basically rolling out a monitoring and evaluation plan. And this final component will be addressed as part of the next two webinars that INAS will be holding in September and in November. But basically, if you remember, it was the policy influence plan template with all the components that I just shared, and a little bit of more explanation. Maybe we can share with the Science Africa the link to this template if you don't remember from last year. Some of the teams have used it and have actually started to think in these terms and update it with the course of their projects. So not all of them use it, but some of them use it, and I hope it was useful. Thinking about linking communication with advocacy, we still believe it all starts with trying to think what is the policy change you want to achieve. And we have stressed this for so long that this will be not the exception. And based on the conversations I had with the teams in the past weeks about the stories of change, we believe it is important to reinforce this aspect. So you can think about the policy changes in three, about 5 types of policy changes: discursive, attitudinal, procedural, content, and behavioral. We just added here a few examples that pertain to the women economic empowerment field, just to continue adding or clarifying what these different types of change can refer to. So when we talk about discursive, we can think about decision makers at country level starting to talk about women economic empowerment to refer to women's employment. Sometimes it's something that seems a very minor change, but it represents a lot, a change in the discourse, new vocabularies, new way of naming things that signify different elements of a policy agenda. Attitudinal. Some of your projects achieved the fact that there was no responsibility for a certain agenda related to women economic empowerment and childcare, but due to advocacy efforts and other factors, the government assigned an agency that is responsible for that agenda. In terms of processes, one example could be that government start to incorporate consultations to women as part of defining procurement processes. In terms of content, which is usually one of the most difficult type of changes to achieve, we can think about government agencies incorporating gender-responsive budget when doing annual planning. And in terms of behavior, we could think about government working with a 3-year plan for women economic empowered that is designed together with civil society organizations and that it is incorporated into the county's strategy. These are just a few examples we wanted to share with you. And as we said, you need to have a change strategy as part of your plan. So here in this slide, what we are sharing is a set of strategies that an intervention can make use of when trying to involve in advocacy processes. So you may recognize, I won't go by one in the interest of time, but you may recognize that your projects have tap into this in some of these activities. So for instance, for sure you have made training and awareness raising, you have produced knowledge through your research. Most of the team have some kind of interaction with the media. You work with partners in different networks and coalitions. Maybe stakeholder mobilization, I don't remember hearing about them, but it's still a strategy to influence policy. Of course, you link with policymakers, you come up with technical assistance agreements, and in some cases, you have also engaged in activities that train and support young policymakers in a women economic agenda or childcare or different policies or policy aspect of your interest. Maybe there is one missing here that has to do with social media and communication in that aspect. These strategies are more thought to target policymakers. Sometimes social media is more like a channel to create debate, but not necessarily is the best way to link with policymakers, but we can have a debate about that. Let me just finalize with 2 examples of how other teams of other organizations in the Africa region have taken advantage of policy windows. I was saying at the beginning that part of analyzing the context has to do with identifying policy windows. If you remember, these policy windows are these major external processes that are relevant to the program, that help focus planning and coordinate engagement and advocacy effort. Basically, it's where these 3 streams, political, problem, and policy, come together, and enhances the chances that decision makers will pay attention or adopt a specific policy. So 2 very brief examples of how teams in Africa have been successful in identifying these policy windows. This is a think tank that some of you may know from Kenya, the Institute for Economic Affairs. So basically, they work, because of their expertise, they work around the budget process. And in this case, the team encouraged corporate, social, and other interested stakeholders to participate in the budget-making process by submitting their budget proposals to be included in the statement by the National Treasury. For this purpose, the IEA Kenya teams holds an annual pre-budget hearings in which different stakeholders submit proposals with the IEA later synthesizes in a form of memorandum of principles and proposals and presented to the Treasury for consideration. These hearings take place along the budget cycle with the participation of the public sector, and that they are also supported by pre and post budget conferences. And we thought it was a nice example of, identifying a policy window and plan activities pre, during, and post hearings in this case, with input from different interested stakeholders and a work by the think tank that summarizes all the inputs. So I think we believe it was a nice example. And just to finalize, another example of how another think tanks, in the case in Nigeria, the CSEA, also took advantage or takes advantage of policy windows, again related to the budget cycle. So in this case, we're referring to our experience of 2016, where the government budget coupled a series of features that made it a unique opportunity for the CSEA team to work around it. First, it was the first budget from a newly elected government. It was the first time the government applied zero-based budgeting, which is budgeting according to needs and cost as opposed to incremental budgeting. And there was a huge public interest in understanding how the budget would reflect the diversity of revenue sources and the sharing of capital expenditure. In that context is that CSEA provided an analytical review of the budget and disseminated it through the media. So it was a very unique moment in terms of budget planning, and CSEA took advantage of it to position its research. So those are the examples that we want to share, again, to emphasize the importance of identifying policy windows. I think I will stop there in the interest of time. I don't know, David and Tim, how do you want to manage this? So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Leandro. We'll give at least 2 minutes or so for anybody who has a question or comment, feedback for Leandro. Anybody who may have a point of clarification? Okay, it seems it's a fair game. We are okay, Leandro. So what we'll do, we are going to share all the presentations after this. And now I want to ask Anthony briefly to show us what South Africa has done in regard to the interactive portal. And then we'll make a few remarks to close. Anthony?
Thank you. So I'm just going to display the GROW website we've designed so far. Are you able to see the projection on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the layout we have so far. We so far have received majority content from AFIC and Strathmore. So as I scroll down here on our partners section, we also hyperlinked the various websites to your actual platforms. So we can also generate traffic to your other websites. And then on this section, we have the story articles. This is where we have the stories published from each of the 11+ projects. And the scroll button is on the bottom left, as you can see. Then we did categorize them according to countries. So under Kenya, we have the various projects, as you can see on this sub-menu tab. And Tanzania, we also have these two. Under Uganda, the same. Ethiopia, and Rwanda. Then the main important part of this platform is the joint forum section. So as I click here, we have this main category. Under this section, you can see the various countries. We have Tanzania, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. So each of these sections can have your specific topic per country, and you also have the topics per project as listed down there. So this is also free for engagement. Anyone can go interact. You also have to sign up first for you to be able to share any comment or feedback on these sections. We also have the gallery section. We've so far laid out a few photos we've taken from the Strathmore AGPO conference and some from AFIC, as you can see on that layout. But we are adding more content as we receive them. We also have a few videos here. These are some of the videos that were taken from the events from AFIC, the one they had, I think, last month. Yeah, so that is how they display. So again, once we get content from each of the project leads, we'll be able to display them on this section. So far, we have about 4 or 5 videos. 4 or 5 videos, as you can see, that are displayed. But again, I repeat, we are uploading content as we receive them from the project leads. So basically, that is the layout we have so far. I'll also share the link to the same on the group, on the Zoom chat, so that you can also have a direct feel of how it looks like. Okay. Yes, I've just shared the link to the GROW website, so you can also see it and give us feedback and suggestions on how it looks like. So basically, yeah, that is what we have so far. That's the layout we have so far. So any comments from the participants or any content you might want us to upload on this section, you can share with us immediately after the virtual meeting.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. I'll find out if anybody has any comment or any question to Anthony. Basically, that is meant to be an interactive portal and is one of the things that Thanks Africa has been asked to do. So we want to provide a platform where you can post your blogs, interact, share information, and also share your reports. And we have said, remember upfront that the rights are for the research teams. Thanks Africa is just a platform and you cannot post anything there until and unless the researchers have given us the go ahead. And we from IDRC before we post anything there. So any comment? I know Bugere had asked about live streaming. I need to say that we don't provide live streaming services, but what we provide is link you up with various media organizations. And also, when we get the videos, you're able now to upload them on our platforms, but don't provide live streaming facilities. Okay, now
maybe just to add on this section, let me just project the screen. The downloads. So far, we have about 6 downloads from AFIC, as you can see displayed. And I'm sure we have a majority of downloads from each of your various projects that you would want us to display. So also maybe kindly after the virtual meeting, can also share the PDF presentations you'd want us to project on this platform as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that addition. I know like IPA had shared with us a blog which we put there and starting with a number of activities which have been uploaded. So please, we want to ask all of us, if you have an activity, let us know. We'll be able to get journalists in your areas to come and cover, and we then link up with us. Like that's what we'll support George with as they have their meeting on Thursday. So any team, we want to ask you that if you have an activity, notify us a few days before so that we can plan and get media team to come and cover, have it published in the media in your area, but also have the same content also put on Science Africa portal so that we can share this among ourselves. Any report that you want to be uploaded, please share with Anthony. He'll be sharing his email. And now I want to just make a few remarks as we close. First, to thank all of us for participating. And then two, to explain that Science Africa's role is to provide all the teams with communication support. And this includes shaping up the policy briefs that you're working on, shaping up the reports you're working on, reviewing the blogs you want to write, and also linking you up with various media houses for publication of any material that you want to go out. So we are there to support that. And ours is to amplify evidence from your research. Then lastly, we need to indicate that this is our first webinar. We'll be coming back to you again with some days later on the next webinar, and we'll be asking you to identify to us areas you want us to deal with. And based on the feedback we got from the breakaway sessions, we're reaching out to the groups individually and helping them work. Like the group dealing with help desk will come to you individually and see how can we work together in coming up with gender responsive communication to share out. So doing that out of this, after this session. So without much further ado, I want to thank all of us sincerely, and we want to then bring this to an end. Hopefully, we'll be able to work closely, and we encourage you to get in touch with us at any time. We'll be able to support you. Thank you very much. We are now at liberty to adjourn. Thank you.
So I've just shared the email where you can send the relevant content so I can receive them. Thank you and goodbye.